I am so thrilled for this second session where we're here to talk about exploring criminal justice career pathways. My name is Erica Bond. I'm the Vice President of Justice Initiatives here at John Jay College. And we are thrilled to welcome students both from John Jay. I know we have some of our future public safety scholars here. Raise your hand if you're one of our future public safety scholars. Wonderful, great to see you all. And we also have some students here from the Volcker Network. What other institutions are represented here? What other schools? Montclair, great. Anywhere else? All right, we've got Montclair and John Jay in the building, and we are so thrilled to have students here today because we started the day talking about how do we support students in exploring careers, giving them opportunities to learn about the very many public safety careers that might be available to them. And then we really wanted to kind of end this program with a conversation really focused on students and really hearing from different professionals from all walks of life who have done everything from research to government to nonprofits, but all really focused on some aspect of public safety, because we thought it would be great for students to really be able to see what's available to them and to really hear from the real life experiences of folks who've had very interesting, sometimes winding careers, sometimes unexpected careers. Because I know all of you are starting to think about what are your next steps and how do I kind of launch myself into my first job in public safety, and then where do I go from there? And I think you'll have a lot to learn from each of our panelists. I am not going to do any bios, because we are going to give each panelist an opportunity really just to tell you about themselves, tell you about their careers. Obviously, we would love to hear what you're doing now, but I think really most importantly, if you can focus a little bit on kind of your early career pathways, right? So thinking about the students that we have in the room, how did you approach your first few jobs? How did you think about mentorship? Did you have internships? A lot of what we've been talking about today are internships and the opportunities those provide. So if you can talk also about your internship experiences if you had them, and how those may have been helpful or not to you as you advanced through your careers, that would be great. So I'm going to start just to my left with would you like for me to start at the end? I'm going to skip you. I heard a little I want a little more time. All right. Rodney Ellis, you're warmed up because you were here with us this morning. So I'm going to start with you, Rodney. I will just say this. Rodney is the commissioner in Harris County Precinct 1, and he will tell you a little bit more about what that means. But he has also done so many things over the course of his career, public safety related and otherwise. So I'm really excited to hear about your career path, Rodney, please.
Thank you. It's good to see you all this morning. So Harris County is the third largest county in the country. So you have Los Angeles County, 10 million people. Cook County is about 5.2, that's Chicago. Harris County, which is Houston and surrounding areas, we're about 5 million people. 5-person governing board, so 4 of us are commissioners. Big precincts, about 1.2, 1.3 million in each of the precincts. And we kind of like a mini mayor, have a pretty sizable budget that we control. And then we have a chair. I'm a lawyer, and I did do internships early on in life. Maybe when I was in high school, I'm old, some Model Cities program as an X-ray technician. And when I went to undergraduate school, I ended up interning, work-study-like program in the athletic department during promotions, not athletics, but promotions at my undergraduate school. And then I went to graduate school in Austin, Texas, the OBJ school, master's program in public policy. And I interned for the lieutenant governor around the Texas state capitol. And it was a real great experience for me. I learned how it's important to dress like your boss and, get a suit, white shirt, get some cufflinks if you want to act like if you want to be state senator, you put your cufflinks on and strut around. And then I interned at HUD one summer from the OBJ school in Washington, D.C. And then when I graduated from my master's program, I went to law school and still interned around the Capitol, then clerked for a judge. and then got a real job doing oil and gas work for the Texas Railroad Commission and hated it. But I did put out a press release. Always learn the art of self-promotion. So I put out this press release saying, Black joins executive staff of the Railroad Commission. That's where you did it back then. So this congressman saw it, and he called up the commissioner I worked for and said, hey, who is this black guy that you have, who's your legal counsel? So I said, oh, you know him. He used to run around the state capitol when he was an intern acting like he was somebody. But he's kind of smart. So that led me to a job in Washington, D.C., long before I should have gotten a job as chief of staff to a member of Congress who you wouldn't remember, but died in a plane crash in '89, about the time CNN was coming online. So it was youthful, a very 44 years old when he died, but a fairly spectacular way if you have to go where you be remembered for a long time. And from there, as his chief of staff, a seat opened up on the city council. So with his backing, when people on the city council were old people like I am now, but so I was 29 and went on the Houston City Council. And then when he passed in a car crash, I thought about running for Congress, but a state senator got in the race and scared me out of it. So I didn't run. But I ran for his state Senate seat, where I served for 26 years, which was an honor and a privilege, but it was a $600 a month honor. So I had to do other things, practice law. I started a little investment banking firm, even had an office here in New York, down near Battery Park, and I was smart enough to sell it to a smart Harvard MBA and put that money in my pocket and stayed with the firm for a good while. But along the way in the Senate, I did work as a lawyer for the government of Mexico, and I did telecom work in West Africa unsuccessfully, successful in South Africa. And then I left the state Senate in 2017 and became a county commissioner. I did practice law with a big firm, Denton's Law Firm, arguably the largest law firm in the world, which makes the case you can come out of law school with a GPA you'd like to not like to talk about, but you can still end up being a senior advisor with the biggest law firm in the world. And now as a county commissioner, I do have one client. I work with Alan Williams here in New York, who is a former Florida state legislator. He and I have an AI client, and the client has challenged us to take the class. He has not taken it, but being in politics, I'm acting like I'm taking it. But so we do work for this AI client in the U.S. and just glad to be with you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to, before we move on to the next speaker, you've clearly had a really varied career in law and government and private industry. I do know that at least a part of your career has really focused on public safety and criminal justice reform. Can you share a little bit about those aspects of your career?
So when I was on the city council, the mayor at the time was Kathy Whitmires, another Whitmires mayor now. Her police chief at the time, Houston was the largest city in America where a white mayor picked a black police chief. Came out of Atlanta, a guy named Lee Brown, who became police commissioner here in New York under David Dinkins, and later became mayor of Houston. Big issue was what you do with crack houses back then. So obviously, I guess I had to take more of a law and order approach, which would surprise my political critics now. But so I was pushing to get more local funding to tear down crack houses, because then you flushed the crack out, you couldn't find it, you couldn't arrest them. It was a big issue. And then when I went to the state Senate in Texas, which arguably still may be the death capital of the Western world, if not the entire world, I just gravitated to criminal justice reforms. And probably among state legislators, I probably have passed more meaningful legislation in a fairly right-wing state, meaning I have to get bipartisan support to do it. But we may have been the fifth state in America to pass a DNA testing statute, which is pretty commonplace now. I can't remember the last state that did it. Might have been about 6 years ago. But Texas is about the fifth state. You wouldn't have thought that would happen there. Energy and defense, a lot of issues. In fact, it was such an interesting record in a very conservative state. Barry Scheck and Peter Newfield asked me to go on the board of the Innocence Project here in New York in 2003. Then at the first board meeting, they said, well, somebody's going to nominate you to be chair. So I chaired that board for about 14 years and stepped down in 2017. I'm still active with them when issues come up. And then in county government, in Harris County, when I was in the Senate, I was a young guy who came to see me once, probably because I was chairing the Board of Innocence Project, and he wanted to sue Austin, Texas, Travis County, because he felt they were liberal over bail reform. And he wanted to make a constitutional argument, the same one Thurgood Marshall used to give African Americans most of their rights in this country, the same one that Ginsburg used to give women a good bit of their rights in this country, and the same argument that the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund used to help Hispanics with many of their rights in this country, and that being that it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution on bail reform. If all the people on this side of the room and that side of the room have the same profile, you smoked a marijuana cigarette when you were in high school, but the ones on this side have money, the ones on that side don't. The ones that don't have money go sit in the county jail because they can post bail. Ones who, the opposite of that, you get to go home. So his argument was that violates the Equal Protection Clause. And he said, I want to sue Travis County, Austin, Texas, and I want to get your thoughts on it. And I said, you think they're liberal until you start messing with these bail bondsmen and you see what tentacles they have in political circles on both sides of the aisle. So I said, if you want to bring light to a dark place, sue Harris County, Houston. That's where I'm from. And I can help you with discovery. There's certain things I can ask for as a state senator, and they'll give them to me. And as long as it's legal, I'll help you with your discovery. So he did, and then files a lawsuit. Lo and behold, I ended up being a county commissioner. I hadn't planned it, but so then I signed an amicus, agreeing with the guy on his argument. And of course, all hell broke loose on my commissioner's court. But that lawsuit, here's my point. We had a very respected Republican federal district judge who ruled on an interim basis that it does violate the Equal Protection Clause to the United States Constitution. Now that lawsuit was a shot across the country. Cook County, Chicago, reformed their bail system voluntarily because of that interim court ruling. But so I've had a bit of a interesting ride in the criminal justice space.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I do want to circle back to you later because you've worked on so many of these issues that have really helped to change these systems. So I think we want to talk a little bit about what does the future of a public safety ecosystem look like and what does that workforce need to look like? And I know you'll have insights there. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Aisha Delaney Brumsey. She is the director at New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, and she's had a very interesting career, I would say, at the intersection of criminal justice and mental health. And so I think we'll offer an interesting career path that we can all learn from. So if you can just tell us a little bit about your current position, how you got there, and also what led you to pursue a career in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Erica mentioned, I'm currently the director of community-based services with New York City Health and Hospitals. I work within the Office of Behavioral Health, so I'm sure you all are familiar with Health and Hospitals. It's our public hospital system. It's the largest municipal hospital system in the country. We are actually the largest behavioral health provider in the city. We provide 60% of all behavioral health services. So my role is actually to coordinate a lot of the services that reach outside of our hospitals and into people's homes, into the communities. And my work really falls into two buckets. It falls into one bucket, which is crisis services. So when I'm saying someone's in crisis, I mean a behavioral health crisis, someone who's experiencing acute symptoms, they're in distress, they're suicidal, they're disorganized, confused, they need emergency, immediate help. So I work on programs that improve that kind of response for the city. And then I work on programs for people who really crisscross different systems. And that's where my intersection with criminal justice comes up. So I work on programs that support people who go in and out of the homeless service system, in and out of jails, in and out of the hospitals, and cycle in that way. And that thread has really been the thread throughout the last good chunk of my career. I started off, I am a PhD clinical psychologist. I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Maryland, College Park, in psychology. I did not start off as a psychologist. I started off as a neuroscience major and biologist, but then I realized they'd make me take chemistry, and they'd make me take anatomy, and they'd make me take things that weren't just about the brain. And I was like, oh, I don't think I care about any other part of the body other than the brain. And then I realized I was probably actually a psychologist. So I got into psychology and then went into my graduate school at UCLA to become a clinical psychologist. And I honestly chose clinical psychology as opposed to a different type of psychology, not because I had a ton of forethought, but because I knew I wanted a career that was extremely flexible. I did not know if I wanted to be a professor. I didn't know if I wanted to do research or be a therapist or what. And I knew if I got that degree, I didn't have to decide at that moment. And that's true. I've actually done research, policy, program design. I haven't been a therapist in a while, but I do therapize my friends. I'm quite good at it. And so having that kind of degree has allowed me to craft a career that's all been driven by one question, which is, what do we do to improve health outcomes for people of color? And I started off in my psychology degree really looking at the environments we live in. How does the physical environment where we live, how do our social environments, our economic environments impact our health outcomes? And I did that, and that was what my dissertation was on. And I was in my 6th year of grad school, and I was trying to finish my dissertation. And my professor at the time looked at me and he goes, I wonder if we're really just missing like a whole big chunk of the environment. Because if you think about the health outcomes of Black men in particular, we're not doing any collecting of data when people are in jail. And so we're probably really undercounting health outcomes. And I nearly threw my dissertation out the window. Because I was like, I am in year 6. I refuse to hear this information now. But I didn't do that. I did, and I put it in the back of my brain. I was like, okay, I can focus the next part of my career on that, because that really spoke to me. It said there's a part of the system that even the public health people who I'm working with, even the people who are most interested in the health outcomes of people of color, are not focused on. When I was in school, we didn't talk about the criminal justice system at all. And so when I was looking for work, I had at that point decided that I did really want to spend my time at that intersection. And so I started to look for applied research positions in that world. And I happened to know someone at the Vera Institute of Justice who told me they were hiring for a research associate in their substance use and mental health program. And so that's where I got my very first job after I did my postdoc. And one thing I should say that's a good piece of advice that someone told me, and that has actually proved very true for me throughout my entire career, is I have never, ever, ever gotten a job that someone did not recommend me for. That is true of my first internship at NIH, where my high school biology teacher, had a friend who worked at NIH and got me into their neuroscience lab. That is true for the current job that I'm in today, where a former colleague was like, we need someone to do this job, and called me out of the blue. I have not gotten a single job without a recommendation. So do not be shy about saying when you're on the market, reaching out to every single person you know, letting them know you are looking for a job, because your reputation is one of the things that will get you into the door. Which is the other piece of advice, which is what my mom told me early on, which was never treat someone in a way that you do not want them to remember you for later, because they will show back up in places that you did not know they were going to show back up in. I've got a colleague in this room right now who I did not know I was going to see today. So those pieces of advice have served me very well. But anyway, back to the path. So Vera Institute of Justice, which I imagine some of you who are in New York know, they were really focused at the time, or our team was focused on asking the question of how do you reduce incarceration for people with behavioral health needs? People in jails in particular, but also in prisons, or people with mental health and substance use conditions are vastly overrepresented. So I wasn't interested so much in academic research. I was interested in understanding from a research perspective what those drivers are, and then using that to work with places, including Harris County, to help implement strategies to reduce that incarceration. Whether that meant narrowing the front door of the jail, so keeping people out, doing things like diversion for people with behavioral health needs, or making sure people get through quicker, or putting in place programs like housing, behavioral health care afterwards that reduce the likelihood that they go back in. So I did that from a research perspective at Vera, and I realized I was really interested in the implementation piece of that. So then I got a job at the New York City Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, which is where Jordan and I actually met, focused on overseeing both our research portfolio around Rikers and behavioral health, but also on our diversion portfolio around how do we reduce the population of people in the jail with a mental health need. It was part of the city's larger efforts to close Rikers under the last administration. That job was huge for me. It helped me understand a system in a way I had never understood it before. I'd worked with different jurisdictions across the country, but I'd never been able to dig in really deeply. And New York City is huge, obviously. It's extremely complex. Every single kind of intervention that any criminal justice jurisdiction, any criminal justice system is doing is happening in New York City. I'm not saying we're always the best. I get that. We're often the best. No. But it's happening here. So it was a great place to be able to do that work. I did that for a couple years. I ran the city's Crisis Prevention and Response Task Force, which stood up programs that I actually run today, like our 911 diversion program, which sends social workers and EMTs to 911 calls for people with behavioral health needs. I was very fortunate to be able to be on the task force, run the task force that recommended that, and then come back to the city now in this job to run that program, which is a really nice full circle moment. But anyway, I kind of took that work and then took it out through a career that helped me go in and out of New York City. I mean, my next job was in a nonprofit, Council of State Government's Justice Center, where I worked nationally across the entire country doing this type of work. And then I came back into New York, worked at a nonprofit, and now here I am at our public hospital system. So that's the kind of quick and dirty, or maybe not that quick, but the outlines of how my career has functioned, and I'm excited to be here and answer questions.
Thank you, Aisha, especially for all of that very concrete advice that I know all of our students are looking for as they go into their careers. Jordan Stockdale, so thrilled to have you. Jordan, until recently, was the chief of staff for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I had the privilege of working with Jordan when we were both in the New York City Mayor's Office, and I know he has an incredible story to share. So thank you.
Oh, great. Hey, good morning, y'all. Good morning. Yes, good morning. Good morning. Thank you. The call and response feels good. So I started out my career as a teacher in East Harlem. I taught special education to middle school students through New York Teaching Fellows. Did that for 2 years. And I loved that. I will say the accelerated teaching programs don't necessarily prepare you super well to be a teacher. So if anyone's thinking about that, 5 weeks is actually not enough to learn how to teach special education. That being said, I did really love the work. Yes, 5 weeks, yes. And I was also planning all my own lessons like I was the first teacher in the beginning of time. But so I did that for 2 years. Then I did a Fulbright in Spain, which was an amazing experience. And then I went to grad school. I went to Princeton
Jordan,
for a year.
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Can you tell us what a Fulbright is?
Oh, yeah. So Fulbright is a scholarship that probably doesn't exist anymore, but hopefully will under the next administration, that pays for young people to go to another country, learn the culture of another country, and work there. The idea is that you'd build bonds that would reduce the likelihood of war and increase cultural consumption, yada, yada. So that's the idea of Fulbright. It's a really incredible experience. I don't think it exists right now, or if it does, it's pared down to a very, very tiny percentage, but hopefully it comes back. And it's something that you can apply for I think, until you're like 35 or something like that. So there's, you got time. Then I came back, I went to grad school at Princeton. I went to 1 year, and in the summer, you were supposed to intern somewhere. And there was a panel on ending mass incarceration that a mentor of mine, spoke at, named Vinny Schiraldi. And he's a fiery orator, and he was cussing, and he's just, older gentleman now from Brooklyn that has a very... Seasoned, thank you very much. Seasoned. From Brooklyn as a, old school Brooklyn, and carries that demeanor. And I was just so inspired by him. I like ran up to him after the panel. I was like, "Hey man, do you need an intern?" And he actually did need an intern. So he was the commissioner of probation under Bloomberg. But under de Blasio, he had this kind of nebulous senior advisor position for criminal justice under the mayor's office of criminal justice, and he had 0 staff. So I became his first staff person after he managed an agency of literally thousands of people, and he poured into me, and it was an amazing experience. And so I have a bunch of mentors from people that he introduced me to. And so I was just lucky, just walking up to him, and he actually met his mentor in the exact same capacity. He like followed someone outside of a panel and said, "Do you need an intern?" So the exact same way. So I worked at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice on juvenile justice issues and school climate and safety, trying to end the school-to-prison pipeline. We created this task force called the Mayor's Leadership Team on School Climate and Discipline that we both worked on, that looked at ways to reduce the number of suspensions, arrests, and summonses in schools. And it created a series of recommendations. It had over 70 people on it, from advocates to union members to people from various agencies, ACS, the Administration for Children's Services, the Department of Education, DOHMH, a ton of different agencies. And through that process, I got to meet people throughout city government. And so I was able to build connections with people in a bunch of different agencies and a bunch of different important advocacy communities that was really helpful to the rest of my career. And I partially did that through working on the task force, but also asking everyone out to coffee. I really, really believe in coffee dates or lunch, and just sitting and listening to people, learning from their experiences, and then you have that connection for the rest of your career, which is really powerful. So I built a strong relationship with Donna Lieberman, the head of NYCLU, through that, who's been very helpful for my career. But just asking people to coffee. And sometimes people will say no, and sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll cancel on you. But like just the act of doing it, I think is really, really important for your career. And at the mayor's office, a lot of problems can be solved through relational trust, which is kind of wild because this is the largest city in America, right? You'd think that there is hard processes to solve problems. Most of them are solved through relationships. And so if you can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I know we have a problem with this random agency, HPD or whatever, I can call someone there, they trust me, we can talk this through, we can figure out the solution," you then become invaluable to wherever you go. And so the coffee campaign, working on task force that are cross-agency, really helped that aspect of my career. And then I went and worked for the first deputy mayor on education policy. And this was Tony Shores. He was an incredibly powerful figure. Obviously, Erica worked for Tony Shores. And that was an incredible experience learning from him. I went back to grad school, finished my degree. I took 3 years off, and they told me if I didn't come back, I would lose my scholarship. So I was like, "I'll see you next year." Finished the degree, and then went back to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to work on closing Rikers. I was our deputy director for Close Rikers. I also worked on Raise the Age. New York State was one of the last 2 states in the country to automatically charge any young person with a crime as an adult. It was us in North Carolina. The progressive state of Texas had better policy. Mississippi, whatever. So we changed that law in 2017. It moved the young people off of Rikers. I worked on that, moving them into ACS custody. It also ensured that we charge many fewer young people as adults. And the population of young people that were detained significantly decreased as a result of the policy. And then I also worked on school climate safety stuff during that part of my career as well. And then I went to the mayor's office, then I went to the Young Men's Initiative, which I ran that for a few years. The way I got that job, very similar to the way I entered the mayor's office. I went to a panel, Deputy Mayor Thompson was speaking on it, Phil Thompson. I followed him after the panel and I said, "Hey, would you get coffee with me?" He agreed. We got coffee, we had a great conversation. A year later, this job popped up. I emailed him and said, "I'm very interested in it." He's like, "Oh, I remember you." And then I did an interview with him, which literally was like, "All right, so I'm excited for you to start. And here's the things we're gonna do together." So that was really incredible. And then from there, part of my job at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice when I was doing Deputy Director for Close Rikers was managing advocacy relationships with the plan to close Rikers. And through that, I met a guy named Alvin Bragg, who became the DA, and because he was working with the advocates as well on Close Rikers. And I asked him, will you get lunch with me? And he said, yes. And we got lunch. We talked for several hours, and we built a real bond. I helped him out throughout his campaign. He got elected. He called me. He said, will you be my chief of staff? And I said I would be honored. And so that was the last 3 years of my career. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jordan. So many takeaways there, but the coffee campaign is the one that really stands out for me. So for all of you who are thinking about next steps, it is time to launch your coffee campaign. Next up, we've got Bill Basel. He's from Just Leadership USA. And similarly, Bill, if you can just tell us about your current role and what led you to pursue the career that you're in today.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how I got into this position. It's been quite a journey and really broken up into two parts for my life based around my criminal background. So the first phase of my career was in education. The second phase of my career has been in nonprofit. I've been with Just Leadership for 3 years, started as the executive projects coordinator. Our president and CEO, Deanna Hoskins, basically needed somebody to take her ideas and I was kind of like the holding tank for her ideas, which was pretty cool, but pretty daunting at the same time because she's quite a visionary. Let me back up though, because I don't know how many people are familiar with Just Leadership. So we are about an 11-year-old organization, national nonprofit that specializes in the fact that those people that are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest away from resources and power to get that change done. We work with the directly impacted community. We advocate for them. We provide technical training, technical assistance to a really large network of directly impacted folks around the country. We've trained about 1,800 people over 45 states in 2 programs. I oversee our training programs. One is Emerging Leaders. It's a community-based program where we go in and we talk to community advocates about policy and advocacy, how to build coalitions, and basically help people find their voices in the community to do the work that needs to happen in cities and communities to effectuate change. We did a lot of that work actually in the Closed Records campaign. It was before my time, but I know a lot of what Jail USA did was the training behind that. Because Jail USA couldn't be the face of a campaign like that, it had to come from the community. And we had to pour into the community to lead that change. So we've done that. We've replicated that program in other communities, other closing prisons, jail initiatives, things like that. We also have a training program called Leading with Conviction that is a 10-year-old program. It's about a year-long program where we take directly impacted fellows from across the nation, bring them in, do heavier leadership development training with them, but also go deeper into policy and advocacy change. We've since, I don't want to say pivoted, but we've expanded our program thanks to our MacArthur initiative here, and that's a good reason why I'm here, because we've got a lot of directly impacted leaders in the nation. If you think about it statistically, a third of the population has a criminal background of some sort. So chances are that people, that are in these positions are, in the workforce and they're really doing positive things in the community. What we're seeing is a lot of directly impacted folks are rising into positions where it's more senior level. Unfortunately, what we saw, and this was kind of the premise for our pilot project with MacArthur, was a lot of these directly impacted folks that were getting into higher level senior positions haven't come equipped with the technical expertise so much to really do the best job that they can. That's no fault of anybody's. It's just they're kind of thrust into positions, but they don't know the behind the scenes things in those senior level positions, like how to read a budget sheet or how to go about a strategic plan for your organization. So we have started Leading with Conviction Plus, in which we are still doing leadership development, but we're really digging into those C-suite level problems that directly impacted communities face. We're focusing a lot on fiscal stewardship, strategic planning, board governance, which is a huge piece of managing and running nonprofits, and organizational development. How can you bring people into your organization, invest in them, but also keep your nonprofit running, not as a nonprofit, but as a tax exempt business. That's one of the things that we try to focus on is, it's not, going for crumbs. It's as a nonprofit, it's really running it in a business model so you can thrive and build towards sustainability. So in my position now as the Vice President of Program Strategy and Impact, like I said, I oversee those training programs and really look more at the metric. How are we making impact with the directly impacted community, both from a quantitative and a qualitative level through our training? So it's really exciting. There's so many good initiatives that we're in. We also have a policy arm at JLUSA called the Justice Coordinating Council. They do a lot of work at the federal level and advocate on behalf of directly impacted folks at the federal level. We take what's going on at the federal level, we try to distill it to the state and local levels for people as well. So that's become a large coalition. Like I said, 2 phases of my career. I got to JLUSA because of the relationships I built after my background and after all that stuff came through. I'm a Northeast Ohio native. I currently reside there. JLUSA is pretty much all remote. We're all over the country. One of my dear friends and a current colleague went through JLUSA's Leading with Conviction program, and we were working together at a nonprofit in Greater Cleveland called Towards Employment, focuses on workforce development for the reentry population. I was in a senior management role there, but really kind of knew for myself, I kind of hit the ceiling there. And was looking for a different challenge, was looking for, I'm going to come back to a phrase a lot, transferable skills. How can I use my transferable skills and the skill set that I've built through education and through nonprofit to keep, growing in my professional career? So she was in Leading with Conviction. She came to me and said, Bill, there's a great opportunity for you in human resources. And I looked at it and I said, I know nothing about human resources. That's not my cup of tea. Don't have the technical expertise. Sat for about a month, and then JLUSA had this executive projects coordinator position that came open. When I met with Deanna and was hired on, a lot of it was that think tank and that thought partnership on creating and really galvanizing our alumni base to create the Justice Coordinating Council. But along the way, we were also going for our IACET certifications. So one of the cool things about JLUSA, being a nonprofit, a lot of nonprofits do training programs. We're one of the only ones that I'm aware of, and I could probably stake a pretty good claim on this, that serves directly impacted people. But we can also give legitimate continuing education units for our training. So what we see in the past couple of years is we've had people that have come through our trainings, they've used their CEUs to help advance them in professional development. We've had some people that have used them for certification renewal, depending on what states they're in and what sector they're working in. So that's been a cool experience. So JLUSA had been working on this IACET project for a long time, about 2 years, and we got to a point where we were in a final interview, and the documentation we had for the IACET governing board so we can get the certification was just not on point. I was in that meeting this was probably 2 months into my career there at JLUSA, and when the IACET commissioners started talking about learning objectives and assessments and stuff, that sparked my educational background, and I was like, we start talking learning objectives, we start talking about Bloom's taxonomy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We got into like the real nitty-gritty of education. And we got off that call. They gave us an extension to get our IACET certification in, about a 4-month extension. And Deanna was like, okay, now you need to go do this too, because this is so important to our movement and what we're trying to build for the directly impacted community. We can't let this fall by the wayside. So we got through that. We received our IACET certification in the summer of 2023, and that's what led to the CEUs. So I think a lot of that in using my transferable skills there helped me get into the position I'm at now. And, we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to explore new programs, new opportunities, but still with our directly impacted population because, like I said, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. But we've learned too, in working with the community, is that their lived experience is an expertise that you can't put a, you can't put an educational degree on. You can't put any amount of CEUs on. Some of our leaders have been to the bottom, and they've raised themselves up. They've raised their communities up, and we want to continue investing in that. So I'll end there and pass it along.
Great, thank you. More to follow up on there. But first, let's turn to Maria Velez, who's sitting just here to my left. She is a professor at the University of Maryland in the Criminology Department. Is that right?
Criminology, criminal justice.
Yes. Criminal Justice
Yeah.
Department. Maria, please.
Oh, hi everybody. Buenas tardes. Yeah, okay. I know there's some Spanish speakers in here. Okay. I'm Maria Velez. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I got here, just briefly, but right now I am a professor in the department at University of Maryland, College Park. My area of research is communities in crime, race and crime, immigration and crime. And so I'm happy to talk to you more about like substantive tracks if you're interested in going to grad school. So I think of the group here, I'm the traditional academic, but I didn't always have it together. And I think that's something that I wanted to convey today, that though we may seem like we have it together now, we're up here, some of us, I can only speak for myself, floundered a fair amount in my early life. So I want to talk a little bit about that in fact, you all are, those of you who are still thinking about your next steps, really, it's impressive that you're here taking this step to learn more about what your future career could be. So, but not everybody does that, and it's okay. And sometimes we take longer roads to get where we need to be. So, the reason I'm here in terms of providing some information about how to become an academic, because of the funding we received from MacArthur and Volcker, I'm a co-director of the Racial Democracy Crime and Justice Network with my very cool colleague, Dr. Rod Brunson. It's a network of scholars that focus on studying issues related to race, crime, and justice. Our goal is to help people get tenure because there was a really glaring need for people of color in academia. We're not getting tenure, so that's the sort of the first hurdle you have to do when you're an assistant professor. And so we figured out how we created a network to help people do that. And then we also try to inform the conversations related to race, crime, and justice, both in the academic sphere, but also in public policy. So happy to talk more about that. I just wanted to say just a few things in terms of the floundering part, because I think it's important to talk about that. My family, we moved around a lot. I'm a second-gen immigrant. My family's from Colombia. We moved around a lot as a kid. We would travel to Colombia. My dad, who was going to grad school when I was young, didn't get tenure when he eventually got an assistant professor job, so we had to move around because of that. We did we lived on the border with Mexico and Laredo. All that to say is that sometimes those experiences seem a little unsettling, but they can inform how you think about the world a little bit later. And I think having moved around a lot as a kid and as a young adult, I think informed me just to sort of navigate different kinds of spaces, feel comfortable doing so, et cetera. So that's just one way to think about this kind of moving around is okay. When I was an undergraduate student, I was very restless. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I switched my major 5 times. And eventually settled on something called political science. Some of you may be poli-sci majors. So then I decided, okay, well, I'm going to go to grad school and I'm going to do this thing. Went to UT Austin because I'm from San Antonio, and was unremarkable as a student. I didn't enjoy taking classes on Congress. I didn't enjoy taking classes on the presidency. I really wanted to talk about people, institutions, things related to inequality. So what did I do? I got branded basically a loser. And so I'm just telling you all this because I think it's important to tell people that. And I only got my master's because everybody else was getting their PhD. And so it seemed like, boy, Maria, you're really screwing up. And so that I spent like 2 to 4 years in Austin. I taught at Austin Community College, Texas State Local Government, because everybody has to take that. I taught U.S. Politics. And then, but the thing that really changed my life was that I started volunteering at a shelter and an organization to help the unhoused. It was on 2nd Street, and helping our brothers out, for those of you who might know a little of Texas history. And I started noticing some patterns of the people that I was helping. And I started also working with the kids that were unhoused and their families, et cetera. And I started to see some patterns of, okay, what's going on with the people who are unhoused? What are some tendencies that I'm seeing? So then I started noticing, okay, well, this is in Austin now. Most of the young people that are unhoused, they are coming from Black and Latino communities. They're getting into a lot of trouble with the police, and they're getting into a lot of trouble at school. So you start to see these patterns. And so that's where my passion started to become ignited, because I saw that's what I really want to study. I want to study that inequality. How does it happen? What are the role of institutions when that happens? And so that brought me to sociology. And when I went back to my undergraduate professors who were in poli-sci, they're like, well, yeah, actually, that's what we do. We're really teaching you sociology. And I was like, well, I would have liked to have known that, because I just wasted 2 years of my life at UT Austin, great school. And so I went back to sociology, and I went to The Ohio State University, and got my PhD in sociology with a focus on urban, soc, and race. And what I think I'll just say a couple more things, and then I want to add up to the Q&A, is that there I was a remarkable student. I was unremarkable at UT, but at Ohio State I stood out because I really think it was the passion, it was the fit, it was the right time, and I had a lot of support at Ohio State. I had a mentor that would do anything for me to help me get through. And so I think when you're looking for your next steps, I think you need to find the people who are going to help you do it. And also, you may feel unremarkable in some spaces. I mean, this is the sociologist in me. But in other spaces, you might feel quite remarkable. And I think it's important to be open to those changes. And then I'm happy to talk to anybody about how you become an academic if you're interested. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you to each of our panelists, because I think each of you offered a completely unique and different story and different experiences, but some advice that really resonated with me. So I'm going to attempt to kind of summarize what some of the key pieces of advice are. And then rather than ask you some more questions about what I find interesting or care about, I really would like to see if our students have any questions, because there's so much here, I think, to follow up on. But just a few takeaways that I think are important for our students, and you really went into this in detail, but really about following your passion, finding out what that question is that really motivates you and interests you. So Maria, you talked a little bit about, and it doesn't have to be something you find in class, right? This was something that you found out in the community and from your own experience, but really thinking about housing and what was driving inequities in housing, and really using that as a way to spark your educational and professional journey. That didn't come from being in school. That came from your own experience. And so I think for students really thinking about all of the things that are inspiring you in your life and all of the questions that you have, you can turn those questions into educational and career trajectories. And that's what I heard from Aisha also, who said, you know, I found my question. How do we improve health outcomes for people of color? And has used that to really build a whole career around answering that question and really being part of the solution in addressing those health outcomes. I heard also about building networks, the importance of, I was joking about the coffee campaign, but it's real. I think, Jordan, you and I first connected over coffee. I think you did actually come and ask me to have coffee, and I've done that in my own career, and I think it's just really crucial advice. It's not always in the formal mentorship programs. It's not always going to be your professor. It is really about finding people who you connect with, who are doing something that you find interesting, and having the courage to just go talk to them. And that could be about finding a time for coffee, but folks are busy. That doesn't always work. Approaching people after a panel, making sure that during lunch after this panel that you sit down and you talk to one of our panelists and just follow up with them about something that you found inspiring or interesting. And that is what translates into opportunities. So Aisha, you said, I never got a job that someone didn't recommend me for. And I have that same experience, right? Most of my jobs I found because someone thought, you know, she might be kind of good at this. She might fill a need or a gap that we have here. And I know that person either because of their work or because I had coffee with them or I had an opportunity to hear them speak, but really trying to find ways to not just develop mentors, but also make sure that they understand kind of who you are, what you're interested in, so that they can recommend you for other opportunities. So relationships are key to that, whether you call that mentorship or networking or anything else, it kind of doesn't matter, but it is really important, especially as you get into your first job after college. It's, I think, tempting to just kind of put your head down and just work really hard and hope that will be noticed. But that gets into the art of self-promotion that Commissioner Ellis spoke to us about, which is you have to look for opportunities to promote your work and to help people understand who you are and what you care about. And sometimes if you're just too busy doing the work, you don't have an opportunity to promote yourself and to really build those relationships that are so important. And then lastly, I really appreciated you talking about floundering and failure, right? I think that's what you were talking about. I think it's very easy to hear people sit on these panels and talk about all the impressive things they've done. And most of us will leave out our failures and embarrassments, right? Because who wants to talk about that? But that is a part of career development. And so getting comfortable with that and understanding that there will be some failure and then relying on your networks, your peers and others to help you figure out how you overcome those challenges, how you figure out your way forward, that is a really crucial and important skill. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody here heard that. And then I think I said that was going to be the last thing, but I have one last thing, which is kind of the flip side of following your passion. It's saying no to the things that don't inspire you, right? So Aisha, you were talking about, like, it turned out I wasn't interested in everything below the brain. You decided there were multiple majors that you were not interested in. And when you are, earlier on in your career, that's an opportunity for you to try things and say no to them. And that is not necessarily failure. That is ultimately what is going to help to propel your success. So I wanted to really just kind of highlight those because I think those were the things that stood out for me as each of our panelists spoke and that I hope you all will take with you. But now I really would like an opportunity for our students to ask questions because you are the ones who are early in your careers and just starting to think about your next steps. And I know there are questions for this panel. Feel free to just raise your hand.
I love running the mic around.
No, you're good.
Firstly, thank you so much for all the recommendations, the coffee campaign especially. My name is Danilo Lázaro Diaz Garcia. I'm currently a student in John Jay. I'm majoring in criminal justice with a minor in law and certification in dispute resolution, and I want to become a lawyer. There's many.
You missed something. And also one of our future of public safety scholars.
And I'm one of the future public scholars, of course. There's many paths that I want to take to create public safety, not one concretely. I've heard that you all had one specific issue that inspired you. For example, corrections, mental health, or simply housing. So throughout your career, what obstacles have you seen that have prevented to be solve these issues? And what recommendations would you tell us, future public scholars, to take to be able to, in the future, try to solve them? To see if I can realign those paths?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you, Danilo. Any takers?
Well, look, I'd say, you don't give up. You have to be creative. The biggest obstacle, to be honest with you, is people disagree with you. And so you got to be big enough to realize that no matter how adamant you may feel about your position, there's always the possibility you could be completely goddamn wrong. So you got to have some margin of understanding, some empathy for people on the other side. But, you know, here's my theory in the public policy space. I ask for what I want, then I take as much as I can get. So you compromise. Sometimes passing policies is an incremental process. And you go after the big one, but you take those small steps to get there. But you just don't give up. You be creative. You know, if it's social media, if it's op-eds, you know, you got to get the votes. At least in a democracy. Now, if you're in an autocracy, you got to have a stick. You know, but that's the best guess I can give you.
Thank you, Jordan. Oh, go ahead, Aisha.
I just want to say I completely agree with that, and I completely agree with also the incrementalness of change. But one thing that I've also thought of to add there is that you have to figure out the way you want to work. The problems that we all work on are massive. They're long-standing. They will be here before and after our careers. But I think I should speak for myself. What I've learned is that there's a certain kind of way I want to work. I'm really good in government. I'm not a great advocate. I am not a great academic. There's a way that I am good at. I'm good at that kind of thinking. I'm good at the kind of tension that happens in government. I am fine with yelling at another city agency, and I'm also fine with like then making friends with them after. Like, you know, you figure out the kind of way you want to attack the problem or disentangle it, and then you sink into that. And I only figured that out by having 5 jobs essentially and trying out a few different things and failing what worked the best for me.
Thank you. That reminds me a little bit. We had a speaker this morning who talked about finding his highest and best purpose. So, and I think that goes along with the commentary you had earlier about finding the question that motivates you. But I think what you're speaking to is, and what's my role in answering that question, right? Because usually these issues are complex. They are going to be tackled from a legal perspective, from an advocacy perspective, from a community organizing. There's so many ways to tackle these problems. So then I think it's important to have that conversation with yourself. How do I put my particular skill set to use? What is it that really makes me feel inspired and motivated in answering that question? Jordan, please.
To say on criminal justice in particular, the pendulum swings quite a bit. Where society wants something one day and then really changes their opinion. When I started this work, it was kind of the golden era, if you will. The arrests were declining, crime was also declining, the jail population was declining, and a lot of society was on board with progressive changes. During the pandemic, that shifted, right? People felt less safe and they wanted different kinds of changes. So I think it behooves policymakers to think 2 steps ahead, to your point about incrementalism. Of trying to get as everything you can, but also think of the unintended consequences. But the reason why I bring this up to your question is that you have to be able to steel yourself through the hard times. Because there'll be times when people agree with you, and there'll be times when the entire public does not agree with you. And you have to be able to fight through that if you're going to stay in criminal justice.
Yes, of course. If you don't mind.
Speaking as sort of from the academic point of view, I would say you go where the evidence is. And so I was very fortunate to be part of the National Academies. We had a consensus panel. Our whole report was on reducing racial inequality in crime victimization in the criminal justice system. And we were charged to provide policy recommendations. And what we were really focused on, okay, what does the evidence say? And how conclusive can you say in terms of your recommendations? And that also means that the evidence is multifaceted, I would say, right? There's different ways of knowing. And I think we're getting better about that in the field in terms of criminology and criminal justice. When we say that something works or it doesn't work, I think we're trying to be broader with our methodologies and our empiricism to be able to say, okay, maybe we don't only have random control trials. We have other ways of determining what things work and what they don't. So my view is always go with the evidence and see what it says, and does it lead you down certain paths. So,
Other questions?
Yeah, it's okay. We're all friends here.
Hi, my name is Dylan Duran. I wasn't supposed to be here. I actually got pulled in from my friend. So overall, it's like my first time also talking. I'm a human services and community justice major. I'm also double majoring in Spanish, and I'm potentially thinking about minoring in counseling. So many people have told me I wanted to connect with. I'm so sorry. What is your name? Maria, I wanted to connect with you when you said that you had your major switched a bunch of times. As someone who swapped their major from criminology, was because I didn't understand, like personally, how I connected with criminology. I connected more with people, I guess. That's why the community justice part in my major hits. But I wanted to ask, did you ever thought about taking any psychology classes overall? Like, does criminology ever make you reflect on psychology?
From my own perspective, when I was your age, I didn't think about psychology. I was more social science or humanities. I was like, it was English, or was it political science? Was it econ? That kind of thing. But my undergraduate students at Maryland, we have a large major. That is a very common dual major, is psychology and criminology. My view on that, just a little unsolicited advice, because that's why we're here, right?
That's right.
That's a pretty typical combination. And so it doesn't make you stand out as much. I think the counseling, maybe the Spanish, might make you stand out a little more. It doesn't mean don't do the psych, but you want to look interesting to a potential employer. So figure out your majors. If you want to be strategic about it. Obviously, I was not strategic when I was your age, but if you want to be strategic, you might want to think about how you arrange your majors. Happy to talk at lunch.
Hi, my name is Natacha Soto. I am a senior at Montclair State University. I'm an international business major, minoring in pre-law. My question is actually for Commissioner Ellis. We got the opportunity to speak over the SPA internship over the summer, so glad to see you again. Glad you're well. But I just had a questions about law school and just some advice you want to give us who are interested in going to law school, and some mistakes that you made in your field of work, and how that manipulated your decision and how you chose the university you did.
So I would say that don't just focus on studying what you think you want to do, because you'll be surprised you really don't know. It changes. I sometimes tell young people, if I'd majored in a real science instead of political science, I wouldn't have had to go get 3 degrees. And, on an earlier panel, someone asked a question about AI. You ought to study it as much as you can. It's going to change so much of what we do. If you go to, I think a law degree is a good thing to have. Sometimes I joke with people, doctors, and I tell them, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor of jurisprudence. I never really wanted to practice law, although I ended up with the biggest, law firm in the world. If I could live my life over again, I think I would have majored in business. I was lucky. I had to hire people around me to watch the money. And, I'm pretty good at bringing in business. And I had to hire good people. I have good people as partners to make up for my deficiencies. So I wish I'd studied business. Or I started off at a small black Catholic school in New Orleans. And maybe if I had studied theology, it's such a powerful tool to convince people, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity. It really is policymaking or practicing law is about the art of storytelling. And religion is such a powerful tool that you can use to convince people. AI helps me. Now sometimes if I want a little that holy roll in my speeches, it helps. But so, look, I just don't think you can go wrong. So I majored in political science, and I came out of undergrad school a year early. It wasn't, people sometimes think I'm smart. It's not what I was running. far is what I was running from. And I got out of law school in 2 years. I have all of my kids ended up going to school in New York. They thought I was good at business. It cost me a fortune. Thank God one of them got a bachelor's degree at the University of Texas. If there's any money left when I die, I'm gonna give him a little more, because he saved a little money. I'm paying for the 4th degree at Columbia now. That's a fortune. And my children, to my generational wealth, they should have gone to public schools. But, look, AI is going to eliminate a lot of the work that associates do in the practice of law. It really will eliminate it. And, I ended up with the biggest law firm in the world for a while. It's going to eliminate some of it. The degree is still good to get. You ought to look at some of these joint degree programs. So I try to encourage, my son who went to law school to do a joint JD MBA program. The ability to count and understand business is just so important, even in politics. I mentioned the $600 a month job. Folks in my household, they have no idea of how I started, how I got to where I've gotten in life. But that ability to understand business is so important. And it's only an extra year in these joint degree programs. I finished law school early. Once I saw what my GPA was going to be, I figured, let's get this over with. So I looked up, look, you just can't go wrong. I still think it's a good degree to get, but it's extremely expensive. There are some careers now where I'll tell people, if you can't get the scholarships or if your family can't pay for it, I can't remember I'm 71 and I'm about to turn 72. Hope I don't look it yet. I got to shave twice a day to hide it. It's extremely expensive. I don't know how anyone would go get 3 degrees now, unless you're getting financial aid. But just calculate the debt, and that's worth it. Because you go spend the money on a car. I'll tell young people that. You could borrow. You borrow it for a car, but you don't want to borrow it to go to school. But look, I think it's a good degree to get. But with me, I must admit, I rambled along the way. When I got to get the master's degree, I had A minus, a C plus, and the rest B's. Only the second time I'd gone to school with white people, I figured, hell, that's pretty good. Then somebody said, well, you got to have a B average. C plus, no, that's not a B average. You're on probation. Well, I didn't read the stuff. I didn't know that. They said, you got 1 semester to get up to a B average or they're going to put you out. And once I figured that out, I got out of that all-black study group. I remember telling them, Martin Luther King didn't die for me to come in and flunk out of graduate school. We're going to diversify this thing a little bit. And it turned out okay. Even if they were mad at me at the time, I said, we got to figure out what these other people are getting that we don't have. This all black and brown study group, no. We need to get some of those crib notes from these other people to get out of here. But just be careful about the debt. Pretty soon, the largest source of debt will be college tuition for young people, and that's a real challenge.
So understanding that it's expensive to get an education, it's a big commitment that many of us are paying off for many years after we get those degrees. I do want to follow up on this question, and I think, Maria, you answered it, and Commissioner Ellis. But for others on the panel, are there things that you wish you'd spent time on while you were getting your education that would have been useful later on? And there's ways to fill those gaps, right? That's what Just Leadership USA is doing right now, is sort of helping folks who've been able to be successful, but they get themselves into positions where there's some skill sets they need in order to continue to progress. And I know all of us, I'm sure on this panel, have gotten ourselves into jobs where, we can do 80% of it, but there's some piece of it that you really are at a loss. And that's where I think you need to turn to your networks. But if you could go back, if there's anything that you could have done while you were getting your education, is there any advice really that you'd give to students as they think about their careers to kind of like maybe take that third year and do an internship or get that business degree, that dual degree, anything else like that our students should be thinking about?
I'd say travel more. I wish I traveled more. I shouldn't have been in a hurry. So at 25, I had 3 degrees. Well, who cares? I wish I'd climbed Kilimanjaro, or I wish I'd gone to Colombia, Mexico, to learn Spanish. But so travel, and you can get degrees at international universities that are considerably cheaper than American universities. And it's interesting, it adds to the rest of it. Do something to make you stand out. So when I mention art, self-promotion, independent validation. I know these things we call op-eds. If somebody's applying for a job for me and you can show me op-ed, even if AI wrote it, until I can figure it out that you did it, but do something that makes you stand out from other people. If it's not a Fulbright, go do something. But at least when I see people who have studied somewhere else, do the summer abroad programs. I did a little deal, walk across the campus at the London School of Economics. And they usually pass-fail, by the way, when you transfer them back to your school. But, that employer may not know that it was pass-fail.
I think for me, I went straight through undergraduate to grad school. And on one hand, that was really advantageous for me. I'm the kind of person that if I had stopped, I'm not sure I ever would have gone back. But it also meant that I wasn't a great grad student. I didn't have the work ethic, and I did not understand how to turn grad school into a job. So now I understand how to bucket my time and my day and like make things work within a certain amount of time, and how to back in grad school. I mean, listen, I had a lot of fun. I was in LA. I went bonkers. So maybe it was fine. But I do wish I'd taken a little bit of time in between, or been the kind of person to be able to have a job to see what I want to do. I think I would have also understood a little bit earlier on the way I wanted to build an applied career. In the end, it all worked out completely fine, and I think I'm fortunate. I kind of lucked into a few very good decisions. The other thing that I do wish I had thought more about, even really early on, was early building my network. I think it took me until a job or two in to really understand the importance of that. Not just the heads down, be good at the work, but think about where do I want my career to go in 4 or 5 years, and how do I start talking to those people now? Not right when I'm trying to look for a job, not right when I'm trying to pivot, but how do I start doing that? So I think those are the couple of things I wish I did. Oh, and I do wish I'd taken Spanish, but they were all at 8 a.m., and so it wasn't going to work out for me. So now my Spanish is still terrible.
Are there any other student questions? Any other student questions? You sure? Okay.
Oh.
We'll get one more. Yeah. Maria Vasti.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Miguel Cinto. I'm a sophomore here at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I'm majoring in criminal justice BS, and I hope to go to law school after this. I'm also part of the Future Public Safety Scholars, before I forget.
Thank you.
And speaking of public safety, we know that we were currently discussing in our class and throughout the entire program that we look to lawmakers and policies to change the course of how certain systems and programs are implemented within communities. But how do you think, besides governors and mayors and of course the president himself, what do you think communities can do to further support those people during the times of need? We're seeing SNAP and Medicaid being cut a lot. What do you think communities can do to help these people?
Related, but closed Rikers would have never happened without just leadership. So I need to say that. It was the organizing of formerly incarcerated people that actually led to the closure. It was a movement that was built, that coalition built with over 100 organizations that came together, demanded the closure, followed the mayor around everywhere, and yelled at him until he said he would do it. And then Raise the Age didn't happen, or wouldn't have happened, without a ton of organizations coming together and fighting for that policy change. And so it's people that work in a bunch of different organizations or volunteer time, a bunch of different organizations coming together around a collective cause is how most social change happens in this country, and certainly this city and state. And so being a part of an organization that can fight for change, whether you're coalition building with criminal justice organization or with a environmental organization, there's a lot of cross collaboration that I think is really important right now. On this current moment in history with the president, I don't feel like I have great answers for that. Yeah, I don't feel like I have great answers for that. Is it the same answer?
It's the same answer. No, I was saying, like, government's only one source of change. The fact is that, like, a lot of things, as Jordan said, they get pushed from other places. I used to work at Fountain House, which is a mental health organization that was started by people with mental health issues, and the whole focus of that organization was to build a movement to build other organizations like itself that support people with mental health needs by people with mental health needs. And it didn't do it with government, it did it with the people who are part of that organization and part of their sister organizations. So that's a little bit also what I was saying before about you have to figure out which way you want to work, which part of the system. So I don't know that the politics is bad right now, but the community is still there. The people are still there.
I think too, I've learned this because I'm not a policy wonk at all working for Jail USA, but I know there's a difference between policy and administrative change. And there's things that can happen to perpetuate administrative change. It doesn't have to be bullhorns and signs and visiting the state legislature, every cycle. I would say get as involved as you can in things like church council, school board meetings, all those little things where you can better understand. And again, another great source of networking and trying to build relationships. If you go and we do this with our Emerging Leaders program, we do pre-assessments and we kind of get a feel for the room. And when we go into a community, know the audience who we're speaking to. And if we have to distill things down to this is how you advocate with your church council, this is how you advocate for your school board, because it's the most pressing issue going on currently in your life right now, that's where you need to start. And there's no fault in that at all. If that's what gets to change quicker, then by all means go for it.
Commissioner.
I think that you always have to remember that we go through phases, and regardless of whether someone is a little upset about government as it operates today, we'll get through this. The good thing for you is that you're young. Now there'll be a tremendous need for young people to take an interest in policy, because there are a lot of changes that are coming about so quickly under the current administration. This is 10 months, it's like 10 years. I was watching Elon Musk's father, who was in the news the other day, make the comment of apartheid. They gave people jobs. I mean, you're too young to imagine it, but I mean, they ended slavery in my policy lifetime. So when Mandela got out of jail, 90, 91, I mean, that then went in power 3 years later, they ended essentially slavery in what was considered a Western power. By the way, the United States was on the wrong side of that issue. But there'll be tremendous opportunities. When I was on probation at the LBJ school, assuming I was going to get flunked out, you had to go through these old reels. I listened to all of those LBJ tapes, all of them. I could write one of those books. I figured I'm about to flunk out of here. I just as well enjoy this. You know what I mean? I'm going to get all I can out of this before I go back. Leave Austin, great town, go back to Houston. I'm going to enjoy this. And I found later on in my life, listening to those tapes and how LBJ operated and the pressure that the civil rights movement put on him, pushed him much farther than he thought that he could go. And he just had the political skill and a lot of luck, but a lot of advocacy, a lot of pressure groups, not just Martin Luther King, nameless, faceless people who played key roles in moving that farther. Those of us who are in politics, in so many ways, we are a reflection of you. So you disappointed with the politics? You be disappointed with you, because we reflect you. We can only move things as far as you are willing to let them go. So in some ways, during challenging times, there are greater opportunities to make a difference. So I would be optimistic. Wish the hell I was younger. Be a little pessimistic when you're my age and I'm coming to the end of my policy making years. But there are tremendous opportunities for young people. And I just won't be around, but it'll be exciting when I see you on the other side to hear how it turned out.
So I want to move us towards lunch because it'll provide an opportunity for the students in the room to really engage directly with each of our speakers on this panel. I want to thank each of our panelists for joining us and being so honest and open about your experiences and even some of your failures. And I want to thank all of our students for joining us here today. So I think what we're going to do now is our panelists are going to spread out across the tables, and then we're going to force our students to spread out because I see they've bunched up, as we all tend to do. As social creatures, we move towards the people that we know. But I want to make sure that our students really have an opportunity to engage with each of you. So thank you again. Really appreciate you all taking the time to be here.
Thank you.